City Controller Brad Lander, who's also currently a candidate for mayor, was in Manhattan to escort several immigrants from a federal building. He has been doing this for weeks now, by the way. Like I said, he's going to join me on set in just a moment. Today, when federal agents in plain clothes tried to arrest one of those immigrants he was escorting, Lander locked arms with the immigrant and just demanded to see a warrant for the man's arrest.
How do we go?
What's your name? What's your name?
Out of the way.
Take your hands off. You have a judicial warrant. Now we're going to see the warrant. Take your hands off.
Guys, you have to have space.
Show me the judicial warrant. Show me the judicial warrant. You don't have a judicial warrant. Give me your warrant. Do you have a judicial warrant? Stop pushing. Do you have a judicial warrant?
Can I see the judicial warrant?
You have the warrant. You don't have a warrant.
I will let go when you show me the judicial warrant. Where is it?
Sir, I have it in my hand here. You're obstructing. Sir, you're obstructing. I would let go. Let go. The warrant. Let's go. Take it back. Take it back. You don't have authority.
You don't have authority to arrest U.S. citizens. Sir, you don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens. You don't have the, I'm not obstructing. I'm standing right here in the hallway. I asked to see the judicial warrant. By asking for a judicial warrant, you don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens asking for a judicial warrant.
Look at the men who escalated that encounter, who handcuffed and arrested Lander in that way. As one Reuters reporter, Michael Derby, later asked, based on how these men are dressed, how would you know who they are working for, what their authority is? DHS claimed on social media New York City Controller Brad Lander was arrested for assaulting law enforcement and impeding a federal officer. But we all saw the footage. That did not happen. In fact, according to the fantastic nonprofit reporting outlet The City, who was there in the hallway at the time, one of the reporters in the room, quote, had overheard one agent say to another minutes before Lander's arrest, "Do you want to arrest the controller?" Okay? This is what the beginnings of a police state looks like, what it sounds like. And here's the thing to understand. Donald Trump's campaign promise of mass deportations of millions, 10 to 13 million people, was always fundamentally a totalitarian project. There is simply no way to pull it off but to construct a police state that doesn't just create misery and suffering for immigrants. It fundamentally must also be an existential threat to American democracy. And we're at the very beginning of this project, and look what it looks like already. And I'm joined now by New York City Controller, mayoral candidate Brad Lander, in his first TV interview since being released from detention just a little while ago. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
How are you feeling?
Whew, I feel angry. I feel sad. I wanted to see Edgardo be able to get out of the building. I'm going to be fine. I lost a button on my jacket, but I've got a good lawyer. I'll sleep in my bed tonight. He's in ICE detention. He has no lawyer. He's been stripped of status and due process.
So when you talk, what were you doing? In what building was it, and what were you doing in that hallway with him?
Yeah, so that was what we call the Federal Building, 26 Federal Plaza, and there's immigration hearings in it. This is the third week I've gone. And what started about 3 weeks ago is that the Department of Homeland Security has been moving essentially to strip people of their status. They were supposed to, they filed asylum applications for the most part, and they should get a hearing on whether they've got credible fear of violence or repression. Now DHS is stripping them of that. And then as soon as the case is over, they don't even know what's happening. And, you know, they don't speak English for the most part. They've had some translation. Then they walk out of the courtroom, and as they walk to the elevator, ICE agents grab them up.
So what happens is the lawyers for the government say we want to drop the case,
That's
right?
right.
Like we don't want these are people who are showing up for their court date.
Yeah, they
to be
crossed
clear.
at the border and checked in.
They checked in,
and then they got
showed
a court
up
date.
at the court date. They showed up. The government says to drop it, and then the ICE folks nab them
as soon as they walk toward the elevator lobby. And so what we've been doing the last 3 weeks is observing in court, trying to advise, give them a little bit of, you should object, like you have an appeal right. And then when they walk out, we just, walk arm in arm. And 5 of the 7 families I've walked out with over the last 3 weeks, we were able to get in the elevator and exit the building, and they could go back home to their families. And they were shaking in the elevator. And when they got out, I just felt like this is what I'm supposed to be doing as an elected official who cares about the rule of law. And these are New Yorkers. But yes, then today, in two cases, a guy named Zed, who speaks Yoruba, and then Edgardo, who is in that picture. We're not so lucky.
So what happened? Was Zed before this?
Zed was before
So
this.
what happened there?
Our arms were not linked quite so tightly.
And they just grabbed him?
Just grabbed him.
Okay, so then this time, you do link arms with Edgardo. Now, I don't want to be I'm a journalist, so I have to be very factual here. My understanding is they don't actually need a judicial warrant, they need an administrative warrant, but they can also act on probable cause. You're asking for a warrant as they're grabbing Edgardo, and what are they saying or doing?
I mean, you can see it on the video. They indicated they had a warrant, but did not show it.
Right. What do you say to people who say that they have the authority, that you're essentially obstructing the law here?
I mean, they've changed the rules until about 3 weeks ago. If you did what you were supposed to do, you would eventually get your credible fear hearing. And when the rules are changed, and even people who do what they're supposed to can't count on not being scooped up and deported, that's bad for everyone when people don't think the rules matter. And that really is what authoritarianism is, when the rules can be changed at any minute and you can't count, even if you do what you're supposed to, file your asylum application, come to court on your court date. Of course, people won't start doing that. So all we want is the due process that people are supposed to get.
So I'm struck. We played Alex Padilla. These are happening in different places in different circumstances. One is at a press conference. I'm kind of struck by how rough it is, I got to say. And partly is law enforcement officials are trained that they need to use force to subdue people, and as a sort of safety mechanism. So there is a kind of training here. But I mean, both in the case of Padilla and the case of you, it looked like you were getting kind of roughed up.
I mean, you saw it on the video, and it kept going well after we were separated.
Did it feel like you were getting roughed up?
I mean, it was, yes.
It was not gentle.
No, it was not gentle.
We begin with the related powers that Trump is wielding that were put on blast today by Democratic California Senator Alex Padilla. You remember this video that went all around the nation. Today, he gave an unusual address on the Senate floor about that forcible removal at the DHS press conference. Padilla using a special moment in this unusual Senate floor speech to say President Trump is acting like a, quote, tyrant.
Throughout this country's history, we've had conflict, we've had tumult, but we've never had a tyrant as a commander-in-chief. How many Americans in the year 2025 see a vindictive president on a tour of retribution, unrestrained by the majority of this separate and co-equal branch of government, and wonder if it's worth it to stand up or to speak out? No one will redeem America but Americans. No one is coming to save us but us.
No one's coming to save us but us. Padilla stepping up to what might be a different role that started when he had that confrontation at the DHS event, presenting himself as a possibly different kind of Democrat, trying to meet this moment against the backdrop of these unusual displays of force and those protests mentioned. Now, let's be clear about the contrast to his pinning to the ground and handcuffing by those federal agents, which now more people may have seen him in that moment than anything else he might have done in his public career. Well, today he spoke in contrast to that moment. He spoke from the ornate Senate floor, the very seat of his actual elected power, co-equal branch of government, which oversees the department that employs the agents who actually manhandled him to the ground. That's different than how he looked the other day. And while the other day's confrontation did seem to escalate quickly, it did seem somewhat unexpected, including for Padilla, who discussed aspects of that on MSNBC. He spoke to Jacob Soboroff and me that night. So I mentioned that because that was sort of unexpected, and both sides referred to it because the DHS folks, in their statements defending it, sort of tried to act like, well, this all kind of popped up in the moment. And that's a contrast to today, another less prominent Democrat, New York City official Brad Lander, who's running for mayor, was arrested in a hallway outside an immigration court as he locked arms with a person ICE agents were seeking to detain. You can see the somewhat dramatic video, the clash, the people there. Now, this has drawn notice and comparisons, but it's actually distinct from Padilla's interaction. And if Democrats or other activists are courting more direct clashes like this, including with federal agents, it may reflect that some in today's evolving resistance want chances to do civil disobedience, or in their view, to highlight what they see as an overreach of federal agents under the Trump administration. And by the way, that has a long tradition in America. But it's also factually and legally different from a situation where you might think or observe that agents are openly seeking these clashes or even escalating these moments on their own. DHS says that Lander basically impeded a law enforcement officer. That's a potential crime. No charges have yet been brought.
Judicial warrant. You have a judicial warrant. You have a judicial warrant. And I see the judicial warrant. And I see the warrant. I will let go when you show me the judicial warrant. Where is it? Where is the warrant?
I have it in my hand here.
I would like to see the warrant. I will let go. See the warrant.
Let's go. Take it right back. Take it back. Step back.
We know that old Donnie likes to build big towers to compensate for maybe things about himself that aren't so big. And you could take that as literally or figuratively as you'd like. You know what we're all hinting at. But it's also about him displaying dominance. To the city of New York that he grew up in, this tower, this Trump Tower, is my sign that I look down upon you peasants, and even you elected officials. I am above you. And that still stands there as his monument. And so in New York today, to see Brad Lander stand up to him, and other New Yorkers stand up to him and say, I'm not going to let you divide us. I'm not going to stand aside while you hurt the most vulnerable. As a person of privilege, as a man from an elected office, a man who's got citizenship, a man who's running for mayor and, isn't a favorite, but he's co-endorsed with Zoran Mamdani, and he has a platform of a lot of people. He chose to use it today to stand up to Donald Trump, to say, in the city where Trump Tower is, Donald, here's your nasty surprise. New Yorkers are united against you. And the governor came, and let's be clear, the governor is not a fan of left-wingers. She's one of those right-wing Democrats, right? And yet, when the chips were down, New Yorkers from across the political spectrum stood up against Trump today. It stood up against his tyranny and put their bodies on the line. It wasn't just him saying words like, I stand with the undocumented, I stand with the people being brutalized with Trump. No, the man, you saw the photos, the man got arrested today, got manhandled by the police. It looked even more brutal than what happened to the senator, Padilla, a couple days ago, for being honest, all because he asked for a warrant. Donald is realizing that in the city where his tower lay, to dominate it, the people look up at that tower and they laugh at him.